on the air.
Welcome to Studio Classroom on the air. We've got a great lesson for you today. My name is Gabe.
And I'm Anne-Marie. And Gabe and I were just talking about the relationship between math and relationships.
I know, odd, right? Can there be a relationship between math and human relationships? Seems a bit random.
But it's not random. The math is a ratio. We are continuing with our lesson called Improve All Your Relationships. And today we'll finally get into this magic 5-to-1 ratio.
So apparently math is magical too. Okay, well, we have lots to learn, and today is a great day to learn something new.
Let's do it together.
Improve all your relationships. How he and his collaborators did this boiled down to looking at whether a pair followed the 5-to-1 ratio. As the Gottman Institute website explains, the difference between happy and unhappy couples is the balance between positive and negative interactions during conflict. There is a very specific ratio that makes love last. That magic ratio is 5-to-1. This means that for every negative interaction during conflict, a stable and happy marriage has 5 or more positive interactions. These interactions need not be anything big or dramatic. A simple eye roll counts as a negative interaction. A quick joke to defuse tension, or a squeeze of a partner's hand all constitute a positive interaction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Language Lab. I'm Jack. 我们今天要看的第一个字是名词 collaborator。Collaborator 的意思是一起合作的人，比方说 Scott has a new project and will be meeting with his collaborators. Scott 有一项新的专案，而且会跟几位合作者碰面。或是 It's hard to believe Danny did the work all by himself. He must have had a collaborator. 很难相信 Danny 是自己一个人把整件事情做完，他应该是有一位合作者。Collaborator 也可以指一位与敌方勾结的人，譬如说 The soldier was accused of being a collaborator. 那位士兵被指控与敌方勾结。接下来我们来看动词 defuse。defuse 是为了不让炸弹爆炸而把它拆除。譬如说 In the movie, the secret agent had 30 seconds to defuse a bomb. 在影片里，情报员有30秒的时间拆除炸弹。文章里 to defuse 的意思是让紧张或危险的状况缓和平息下来。例如 Seeing that his two friends were about to fight, Chris quickly did something funny to defuse the situation. 眼看着他两个好朋友就要打起来了， Chris 赶紧做了一个好笑的事，化解火爆的局面。或是 The secretary is very good at diffusing tense and awkward moments in the office. 那位秘书很会化解办公室里紧张又尴尬的状况。Okay, let's get back to our teachers.
Thank you very much, Jack. Okay, well, let's continue with our lesson here. How he and his collaborators did this boiled down to looking at whether a pair followed the 5-to-1 ratio. And yes, you just learned that phrase yesterday, to boil down here. But the use of the word looking at in this sentence is kind of like the word observing. So people are observing whether a pair, that is a couple, two people that are together, think about the 5-to-1 ratio.
And we read on here, as the Gottman Institute website explains, the difference between happy and unhappy couples is the balance between positive and negative interactions during conflict.
Okay, so there is a very specific ratio that makes love last. And of course, as we've mentioned before, ratio is a key theme in our lesson. And the way we talk about ratios is with the word two. So there are two numbers, and often there will be a colon, but actually you don't usually say 5-1. We would say 5-2-1, or if it's other numbers, 7-8 ratio or something like that.
That's right. And the magic ratio we're talking about in our lesson, it says that magic ratio is 5-2-1. You might have seen that early in our lesson, like Gabe said, with the colon.
Exactly. So we read here, this means that for every negative interaction during a conflict, a stable and happy marriage has 5 or more positive interactions. Now, friends, we think this is a great phrase or sentence pattern for you to know. For every something, there is or there are another number of something else. This is actually a very common way of talking about ratios.
You might have heard someone say before, for every person that doesn't like you, there are going to be so many other people who do. That means the ratio between people who don't like who you are and people who do like you for who you are is going to be out of balance.
Exactly. There are a lot of people that will like who you are. Another way I think of, or some people use this phrase, is when talking about a classroom. Maybe there are, 20 guys in the classroom, but only 5 girls. You would say for every, For every guy in the class, there are 4 girls.
Right.
Oh, it's the opposite. My math is terrible, by the way.
Wait, say
For
say
every
the
girl
sentence.
in the class,
There are 4.
there are 5 guys.
Oh, 5 guys.
There it is.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
We got it.
I gotta
We
work on
teach
my math.
English here, not math. So we're
Exactly.
okay. All right, let's keep going. These interactions need not be anything big or dramatic. A simple eye roll counts as a negative interaction. I have to make a confession,
What?
students. I used to roll my eyes all the time when I was younger.
Yeah.
At my parents, at my teachers, to everybody.
Can you demonstrate what that might have looked like, Anne-Marie? How do you roll your eyes? I think we need a close-up on Anne-Marie's face here
Oh,
for
okay.
her rolling
Are you
her
ready?
eye. Yeah, go ahead,
Here we
Anne-Marie.
go.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You
There
look
is
like,
usually a sigh involved as well.
look like a zombie there. All I can see is the white of your eyes.
Wait, I don't know what to say to that.
Just roll your eyes. Yeah, usually rolling someone's eye, when someone rolls their eyes, it's kind of a rude thing to do. That's probably why you got into trouble,
Well,
right?
yeah, and if you do it to an authority figure, it's disrespectful for sure.
Yeah, totally. We might even use the word flippant,
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's a good word.
It's kind of, oh my goodness. Have you ever rolled your eyes at somebody? In Chinese, that would be 翻白眼, okay? You just think, oh my goodness, what this person's saying is absolutely ridiculous.
I've had students roll their eyes at me before, and it reminded me of when I was young.
and so
now
what did
I
you
know.
do as a punishment when they rolled their eyes?
I just remembered the times that I've done it to teachers in the past, and I tried to just grin and bear it.
All right, grin and bear it, just have to endure the situation. Sounds like your past was coming after you, Anne-Marie.
It was. That's maybe some people would say that's karma.
Right. Well, anyway, so that is a form of negative interaction, our lesson suggests. But we see a kind of positive interaction here. A quick joke to defuse tension or a squeeze of a partner's hand all constitute a positive interaction.
So our text is just saying that for every negative action, you need to have more positive interactions that happen. Like it said, an eye roll is a negative one, but if you counteract that negative action or reaction with something positive, a kind word or the squeeze of a hand, then that is going to keep your relationships happy.
That's right. So friends, whenever you do an eye roll, make sure in that same day to squeeze your partner's hand 5 times. All right. Hey, speaking of partner, we have a special phrase for this. Let's take a look at that in the info cloud.
Hi friends, we are glad you joined us here on InfoCloud. Hey Rex, would your family be free to come to my place for dinner a night this week?
Oh, that would be fun. Hey, let me talk to my better half about it. She makes most of the plans for our family.
Well, sure, that sounds great. And you just used a great phrase that we can talk about. Your better half. So, who is your better half?
My wife is my better half.
It's always sweet to hear a husband say that. Your better half is your spouse, especially when referring to your wife.
So can you call your husband your better half?
Technically, you could, but the phrase is more commonly used when a husband refers to his wife. You can say, Tim took his better half's advice by staying home from work to rest.
Now, Andrea, I've also heard better half used in another way. For example, I spent the better half of the morning doing vocal warm-ups.
Yes, that's a good point. Here, better half means the majority of something, the better half of something. Listen to this example sentence. It uses both meanings we talked about. The better half of the movie focused on how the main character met his better half. Or you could say the majority of the movie focuses on how the main character met his wife.
在华人传统社会中，男人通常会用老婆或太太来形容另一半，西方人就有一点不同，他们会用 better half 比较优质的另一半来形容太太。I have to ask my better half about coming to the party. 我要问我太太是否要参加派对。西方人因为宗教的影响，结婚之后夫妻成为一体的观念比较强，因此才会用 better half 比较好的另一半来形容自己的太太。虽然老婆也可以用 better half 来形容老公，但通常比较多是先生形容太太的称呼。除了另一半的称呼之外， better half 也可以形容一样东西的主要部分。例如I spend the better half of the morning singing. 我早上用大部分的时間唱歌。这就是今天的 Info Cloud， 我们下次时间见。
Studio Classroom is on the air.
Welcome back to Studio Classroom. So let's have a quick review. How would you put the magic 5-to-1 ratio in your own words?
How about this? For every negative interaction during a conflict, a stable and happy marriage has 5 or more positive interactions.
Gabe, I don't think those were your own words. That's how our lesson describes it. Like, exactly. Word for word.
Well, so what if I memorized it? You can't say I wasn't paying attention.
Well, I guess that's true. But did you just roll your eyes at me? Did you know that this magic ratio is good for all relationships? An eye roll counts as a negative interaction.
Improve all your relationships. A real thing for other relationships too. It's important to note that while the 5-to-1 ratio was invented for couples, it's a handy standard to keep in mind for all relationships. Friendships are more nourishing when both parties make sure that small kindnesses outweigh slights. Humans are complicated, and the details of maintaining healthy, positive relationships, as we all know, can get tricky. But all relationships are off to a great start if you begin by setting the 5-to-1 ratio as a baseline for how you interact with each other.
OK， 下一个字是动词 nourish。To nourish 的意思是提供营养或是滋养。比如说 Thelma took good care of the puppies and nourished them with high-quality puppy food. Thelma 好好的照顾小狗，并提供高品质的狗饲料喂养它们。或是 Marcy bought a whole set of very expensive skin products to protect and nourish her skin. Marcy 买了一整套非常昂贵的肌肤保养品来保护、滋养她的皮肤。我们也可以用 to nourish 来指培养一个愿望、梦想或是念头。比方说 Roger has always nourished this idea of becoming a successful Hollywood actor. Roger 一直有一个念头，要成为一位成功的好莱坞演员。最后我们来看动词 outweigh。To outweigh 的意思是比另外一个还要大或是重要。譬如说 Lana has decided not to go on the trip because her reasons for staying at home outweigh her reasons for going. Lana 已经决定不去旅行，因为她留在家里的原因大于她去玩的目的。或是 Most of the supervisors are not convinced that the need to buy new equipment outweighs the need to save money. 大部分的主管不认为买新的器材的需求有大于节约用钱的必要。To outweigh 也可以用来指比另外一个人或是东西还要重。譬如说 The cat is so fat that it outweighs the dog. 那只猫非常肥胖，体重比小狗的还要重。All right, let's get back to our teachers.
Thank you very much, Jack. Well, let's talk about how the 5-to-1 ratio is not only beneficial for romantic relationships, you and your better half, but how it can be positive for other relationships too.
That's right. Let's begin reading here. It's important to note while the 5-to-1 ratio was invented for couples, it's a handy standard to keep in mind for all relationships.
That's right. We want to take a look at that phrase toward the end of the sentence to keep something in mind, or keep in mind something, okay? This is another way of saying that you are going to intentionally try to remember something.
You know, something I have to keep in mind on the weekends is that my favorite breakfast shop closes pretty early.
Oh my goodness.
So if I forget, I don't get my very special brunch.
What kind of a breakfast shop is that? You know, my favorite breakfast shop closes an hour earlier on the weekdays, and it stays open later on the weekends.
Well, see, that would make
makes
more sense.
You tell your breakfast shop owner to watch this program.
Keep it in mind.
Yeah,
keep it in mind. You should be open longer on the weekends.
Exactly. Okay, well, think of another situation where you can use that phrase. But I kind of like that word handy as it appears in our lesson, because in the previous section we saw about how you can squeeze your partner's hand.
Oh, yeah.
And if something is handy, that means it's readily available and it's something that is easy to use.
That's right. Well, we read on here, friendships are more nourishing when both parties make sure that small kindnesses outweigh slights.
Oh, and that's kind of an interesting word that I don't use very often, but the word slight is something negative that you do or say to somebody else. But we read on here, humans are complicated, and the details of maintaining healthy, positive relationships, as we all know, can get tricky. That is a useful phrase to know, as we all know, okay? This is a fact that everyone knows. Now here's the thing, it's not always okay to state the obvious things like this. However, it can be effective to sometimes acknowledge something that is common knowledge or something that everybody should know.
For example, as we all know, Taipei's weather is pretty wet, so we all have to remember to take an umbrella with us when we go out.
And Marie could have just said, we all have to take an umbrella with us, but providing that other information and saying, as we all know, is helpful to provide context, okay? We read on here, but all relationships are off to a great start if you begin by setting the 5-to-1 ratio. If something is off to a great start, or off to a bad start or something else, that phrase means it's the way that something begins.
That's right. Well, friends, you know, all relationships are going to have conflict in them. It's not something that we can avoid. So we want to ask our teachers a question today, and that question is, what's the best way to handle conflict? Let's see what they have to say.
How do I handle conflict? Well, come a little closer and I'll show you. Actually, I try to avoid conflict. I don't like fighting and arguing with other people. Sometimes it's important to take a stand, but sometimes you can let the other person have their way and maybe talk about it later when things have calmed down. But yeah, you don't always have to win. Be kind.
Friends, conflict happens to everyone. Sometimes you don't agree with people. So what do? Well, the first thing is to listen. Understand what the other person wants, what they're thinking, and then you can share what you're thinking. Don't immediately think that the other person is wrong or wants to hurt you. Try to understand what you both want. By talking about it, eventually you can figure out how to fix those problems. But remember, sometimes if the conflict gets really heated, people are really angry, sometimes you might need to take a break. Go sit down somewhere, slow down, and then maybe find another time to sit down and talk. Above all, make sure you're safe, and then you'll be able to solve your conflicts.
When you're in a relationship with someone, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship, conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen. So instead of being scared of it, you can face it. When you have a disagreement, maybe you need to take a little time, walk away, cool down for a little bit, get your thoughts gathered, and then, like a true peacemaker, you can come back together and discuss it. You can be the first one to say, "These are the ways I was wrong, I apologize," and listen to the other person's side of the story. Even if you're angry, it helps to come together and discuss it and restore peace in your relationship. Remember why you're friends in the first place, why you love that person, and make the restoration of that relationship your goal.
Okay, friends, we've learned a lot about this 5-to-1 ratio, and especially when it comes to a romantic relationship. And my question is, have you had or heard any good marriage tips or advice that really stood out and really helped you in your relationship? Anne-Marie?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. There is so many different kinds of marriage advice out there. I would have to say that what I've learned the most, and it's from my own experience, is to be good friends with your partner.
All right. Okay, so what you mean is the friendship is the most important aspect of your romantic relationship.
I think so, because if you take time, like think of your friendship with a normal friend.
Like a best friend.
Like a best friend. You spend time with them, you talk to them, you share with them. And for me, that's the most important part, I think, of my relationship with my husband. Because when we share our lives together and we talk together and we spend time together, I found that our relationship in general is just better.
I think that's a good point, because often it can be easy after being married for a certain period of time to kind of take your better half for granted.
For sure. Well, and some people expect marriages to be romantic all the time.
Yeah.
And that's nice, but I mean, I've been married for 7 years and it's not always romance.
Well, like you shared earlier this month, I forget which lesson it was for, you said love is a choice.
Yes.
Right? Was that for yesterday? Yeah, like love is a choice, right? It's not necessarily a feeling that you always have, but even in those hard moments, you need to choose to love the other person. And that's true for all friendships too, actually. The love that you have in any relationship is a choice.
Well, friends, thank you so much for joining us for this lesson today. And we have a brand new lesson for you next time. We hope you join us right here on Studio Classroom.
It's a lifetime. I am so proud to have you in my life. A good friend lasts a lifetime.